Greetings, friends and fiends, and welcome to The Keep. I am Lindsay the Keeper, and it is my duty to protect this reality from eldritch horrors by reading tales from r/RPG horror stories. I'm sure if you're part of the D&D community, you will recognize the term rules lawyer. For those who may not know what they are, in simple terms, these are people who are very knowledgeable with the rules of the game, more specifically in TTRPGs, which can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, there are some that are actually helpful when you don't know something about the rules and making sure you are allowed to do whatever it is you're wanting to do, although most of the time, DMs can usually answer that. But it helps when you have another person confirming the information as well. However, the rules lawyers that we mention are those who try to argue with the GM with every little issue they have if they can't get away with their behavior at the table and are the worst metagamers out there. In this story, OP is a DM who had a rules lawyer as a player who, on one session, decided to prove how knowledgeable he was with the rules, until it backfired on him, and when he didn't get his way, he threw a tantrum that left an ultimatum that was beyond ridiculous that I decided to ask my friends, who are GMs themselves, on what they would do if they had a player like this. Now, sit back, relax, and cuddle up to your favorite tendrils as I dive in on this horrifying tale. Enjoy! This is written by user T. Garrison with the title, Rules Lawyer Outsmarts Himself and Then Has a Fit. I had a player who played in a couple of campaigns. He was known to be a rules lawyer and was a bit of a pain to start. Though I was relatively new to running games and he was reliable and local, which is a big plus when you live in a relatively rural area with a small pool of players. When we first got started, he would challenge me on rules mid-game. To keep things going, we defaulted to Rule 0 after some pushback, and every game was followed by 1 to 2 page single-space emails detailing the areas where he disagreed with my decisions. A few times, I did not retcon, but made clarified rulings for how things would proceed if it seemed like I made an incorrect call at the table. The vast majority of the time, it boiled down to, "This is the way we're doing in my games. Sorry if you disagree, and feel free to run a game by your rules. I'll even join as a player." We started a long-running campaign in a crazy homebrewed world during the heyday of D&D 3.5. There were 6 players. I allowed some third-party content, so everyone had slightly overpowered characters. Rarely do a group of players complain if they have too many strong abilities after all, and this was a mostly fun game. It didn't stop the long post-game emails, and they continued to get longer every week from Mr. Rules Lawyer, finally topping out at 4+ pages after every game session. We had played the campaign from level 1 to level 12 over more than a year when they decided to try and rob the very well-protected vaults belonging to a lich. It was known this place was heavily trapped, and the one gap the group had struggled with the entire time was not having a rogue. They came up with inventive ways of finding, triggering, or dodging traps. I was fine with this. After the infinite trap in this particular session, they had located yet another magical trap. The rest of the party retreated 60 feet around a corner with the intention of sending in a summoned minion to trigger it. Mr. Rules Lawyer mocked the rest of the group for their cowardliness and explicitly stated, "These traps always have a radius of 30 feet. I'm going to stand 31 feet away from the trap and watch it go off." This particular trap happened to be the Circle of Death, which in 3.5 had a radius of 35 feet. I was doing my best to keep the devilish GM grin off my face, particularly since this was the 3rd time they had found one of these, and I knew he was making a potentially fatal mistake with his character. So for those who are curious about the Circle of Death spell, I'm going to post the spell here and explain just a tiny bit more on why this was a terrible plan on Mr. Rule Lawyer's part. For those who are just listening in, The spell states that the spell slays 1d4 HD worth of living creatures per cast level, maximum 20d4. Creatures with the fewest HD are effective first, among creatures with equal HD. Those who are closest to the burst point of origins are affected first. No creature of 9 or more HD can be affected, and hit dice that are efficient to affect a creature are wasted. What this essentially means is, the closer you are to the source of the burst, the worse off you are, especially from a powerful lich. But even with poor judgment and placement, there is a chance that he could survive it. As long as he doesn't roll horribly, that is. The trap was triggered, the spell went off to the full radius, and Mr. Rules Lawyer rolled a natural 1 on his saving throw. Immediate character death results. First, he whines that it isn't fair. Then he suggested I lied about the radius. After looking up the spell, he then accused me of changing the trap type after he declared where he was standing. So, I showed the whole group my notes and the trap map for everything they had discovered. I had written it all up in Word document and printed out the notes, so it wasn't like I could easily change them with my pencil at the table. The group rested, and the druid prepared a reincarnate spell to bring Mr. Rules Lawyer's character back to life, since he was their cleric. Rolling on the chart for the random reincarnation race, it was going to turn Mr. Rules Lawyer's character into a human, which really isn't that bad, even if it was going to change up his stats a bit. And they were getting high enough with some effort and a side quest, they could have gotten his original race back. Instead, however, Mr. Rules Lawyer said his character would be offended to come back as a human and would never do so, that the character's soul would rather stay dead. I asked to confirm, the other players told him to stop being dramatic, he insisted on this. I stated, the reincarnation fails because character's soul declines to come back. The body dissolves to ash and she is permanently dead. Mr. Rules Lawyer then threw a fit about being permanently dead. I didn't budge. He chose death for his character over inconvenience, and I wasn't going to let that slide. I was happy to have him roll up a new PC, especially since the Lynch had an entire area devoted to unique specimens coming up. It was the perfect place for the party to find his new PC and get back into the game. That night, I received a 6-page diatribe after the game. Mr. Rules Lawyer's final ultimatum was that I should allow his character to come back as a ghost, which can possess the bodies of other characters, both PCs and NPCs, with no saving throw. While possessing a body, the ghost gets to keep all of his mental stats and character/class abilities while gaining the body's physical stats and racial abilities. This possession had no time limit or way to end it, other than, when I find a more suitable host, I'll just move on. This was clearly broken and in no way same power to grant to any PC or even NPC. No saving throw versus indefinite possession? No way, no how. I declined. He insisted he was never coming back, which I confirmed was correct, and then permanently disinvited him from this and all future campaigns with me. I printed out the entire exchange to share with the other players so they would know why I did this, and they were amazed I had put up with the emails for this long, since they had no idea it was going on at all. After all was said and done, I discovered just how much extra stress those emails had added to my life and actually felt rejuvenated and more excited to continue with the campaign. It was also a very valuable lesson in drawing boundaries with players, and I now caught off any of this behavior quite early. I don't mind if people disagree with my rulings, and I'm happy to discuss it with players so we're all in agreement on how to go forward. But someone questioning all of my decisions as a GM is clearly a bad fit and should not be in my groups. I give this advice to other GMs and offer up this horror story as reasons you should not be afraid to set solid boundaries, even when you're new to running games. End of post. Good on OP of giving this lesson to future GMs for this type of behavior, because it's really inexcusable to do when you make a dumb decision and then whining about the race you rolled up. Earlier, I mentioned that I asked this with all my friends who are DMs themselves on this situation, and the response has been sort of the same. Either they would make it fair by having a savings throw and willingness thing for the sake of the table, not the individual player themselves, or just outsay no because of how unfair and overpowering it actually is and ask them to leave the table. Even OP in the comments actually explained how much this changed him as a GM since this event was about 20 years ago from now and has no time for bullshit like that. If you have a player like this at your table, stop and really think about it for a minute to see the pros and cons of having them at your table. If the cons outweigh the pros, then it's safe to say it's okay to boot the person out of the game. Plus, one of my DM friends that I talked to kind of pointed out how Mr. Rules Lawyer was acting like those kids when playing superhero and being like, I have super strength and super speed and super brain powers and I'm invincible and no one can touch me so I win. Pretty ridiculous if you ask me. Now that the story is over and reality is still in a state of calm, I'm going to depart for now. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos. If you have your own horror stories or some TTRPG randomness you'd like me to discuss, contact me through my email, Twitter, or subreddit. Until then, I will see you in the next video.